Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. We have some more news today, so let's get to it. The very first thing I want to tell you guys about is actually Marco Makes and his Rubbersaurs line, as he has just finished a brand new Series 3 Raptor sculpt, and he will be selling it on his Etsy store very soon. As usual, when it comes to Marco Makes, the accuracy is pretty much off the charts as far as his figures go, and this Raptor is again beautifully sculpted, as usual, looking extremely accurate to the film version of the Raptors, and overall is just yet another of the beautiful Rubbersaurs in his long line of incredible Rubbersaurs. So make sure you keep checking back to Marco Makes Instagram account, keep checking his Etsy store, and when this does go up for sale, make sure you pick one up. Also, as far as the Beasts of the Mesozoic goes, we do have the official image of the Eotyrannus paint scheme. We had just reported in the video yesterday that everybody was kind of considering that would be the Eotyrannus, and as it appears they were all correct, as it is definitely the Eotyrannus, and we have a very nice look again at the paint scheme, a little bit better of an image compared to what we had seen on the initial image yesterday, and definitely a very nice looking paint scheme. I'm really intrigued to see exactly how this will translate to the prototype itself, but I'm certain, being a David Silva Creative Beast Studio Beast of the Mesozoic figure, it's going to be beautiful. And then as far as Yuppie Chen goes, if you can recall, I did review the Yuppie Chen Tyrannosaurus Rex, and then he recently released a Giganotosaurus, which was incredible. Well, he now is tugging at my heartstrings by creating a Majungasaurus, and it is probably the most beautiful looking Majungasaurus I've ever seen, and I've only really seen the head sculpt, as that's all we really have images of currently, but man, is this thing incredible. I ended up missing the Giganotosaurus, unfortunately, but this one here I don't know that I'll be able to skip out on. This is definitely something that I would love to get my hands on. Again, being a Majungasaurus, it's probably my second favorite dinosaur right behind Carnotaurus, and is something that I would love to have in my collection, because the Majungasaurus models that we get are very few and far between, and it's not often that we get one as nice looking as this. This is again the only images that we have so far, so when more images do become available, I will of course let you guys know. And then we have another look at the Rebor Retrosaurs, as we have kind of some jawless images, giving us a good idea of what the actual figures will look like. Really cool looking as per usual when it comes to Rebor. They usually give us some fantastic figures, and this one is one that I personally am really excited about, because I am a gigantic fan of vintage retro dinosaurs, and these are probably going to be some of the best retrosaurs that we'll ever see in our lifetimes, as they are pretty much the perfect appearance and, in my opinion, perfect color schemes for a vintage style dinosaur. And seeing these images of the actual figures as they're being produced definitely lets me know that they're going to turn out quite nice overall, and reassures me that these Rebor vintage Tyrannosaurs are definitely something to stay excited about. And then as far as Mattel goes, and this is a huge thank you to Collect Jurassic, as they just recently threw up some images of a bunch of upcoming Mattel figures, and a lot of figures that, you know, a lot of people were really interested in seeing, and one in particular was one that I really wanted to see a reveal of, and I am very happy about. But the very first one that we have here to look at is actually the Majungasaurus, and this one is interesting. The head pretty much looks, of course it's a very interesting species of stegosaurus, so the head pretty much looks just like the normal Mattel Stegosaurus, but the body overall does look quite nice. I actually really quite like the sculpt. However, the paint scheme I am definitely not a big fan of, and the random brown legs are just so strange, and I don't really understand the reasoning for having the brown there on the legs. It looks like there's some brown there on the body and the underside, so maybe a better image, maybe a side image, will give me a better idea of exactly what the actual paint scheme looks like, and maybe it'll be a little more appealing then. But personally, as far as this image goes, I'm not necessarily a big fan of the actual paint scheme they've gone with, but the sculpt does look quite nice overall. And one important aspect to these figures to remember, and these images to remember, is that these images were actually kind of blown up. They were initially very small images, so the actual detailing aspect of the figures isn't going to be as nice looking on these images as you'll actually find on the actual figures. So that is something important to remember. When you see the images here, don't crucify the figures just based off of the fact that the detailing aspect doesn't look look that great, again because the images were enlarged by Collect Jurassic so that we could get a better image of them, a better view of the figures. But the next one we have is the Gallimimus. We have a very interesting looking green Gallimimus now coming from Mattel. It appears as though we're getting a second shot at the Legacy sculpt, which is great because I think that's personally the best Gallimimus that Mattel has released so far. Interesting paint scheme with the greenish coloration. Can't say that I love it, can't say that I hate it. I'm not too sure exactly how I feel about it quite yet, but definitely something interesting coming out. It's nice to see at least a little variation in the color of the Gallimimus. Then we have a Dilophosaurus, and this one looks cool, I think, as far as the paint scheme goes, everywhere except the eyes. The eyes look so odd to me. I'm not entirely sure exactly what is going on there, but the eyes are definitely a pretty big downside if you ask me as far as this figure goes, and definitely something that I hope Mattel improves before they release the figure. Other than that, though, I do think that the figure looks quite nice overall. And then we have the Sauropelta with a nice greenish color scheme now, as opposed to the previous red release that we've had. And I do actually quite like this one as well. Again, I think that a lot of these figures will look way better in person than they are in these images here, especially because Mattel isn't usually the best as far as their promo images go. And 99% of the time, every time I see a figure in person, as far as a Mattel figure, it's usually much better than the promotional images lead me to believe, and I feel like that's definitely going to be pretty much the exact thing that will happen with all of these figures that we are seeing here before us. But then we have the adult version of Bumpy. So previously I kind of thought that this was just going to be another re-release of the previous Ankylosaurus from Mattel, but we can see that it definitely has a little bit of difference to it, and overall I think it looks quite nice. It's really cool to have now an adult and a baby version of Bumpy. So any Bumpy fans out there, you'll have your fix of Bumpy for sure thanks to Mattel, and another really nice Ankylosaurus release. Then we have another of the trio of Baryonyx from Camp Cretaceous. This one I think looks quite nice actually as far as the paint application goes, although there's not really too much to it. I would have really liked to see more paint apps like out onto the tail and stuff. But regardless, I still think it looks quite nice. Slightly different appearance compared to the original Baryonyx from Mattel. Overall, I definitely like it. And then we have another of the trio of Baryonyx. I can never recall exactly which one is which as far as the names go, but this one also looks quite nice as far as the paint application goes. We have had some green Baryonyx from Mattel in the past, but I've always enjoyed them as far as each of the green Baryonyx releases previously, and it is very cool to now have the entire trio released. Well, not yet, but we will have the entire trio from Camp Cretaceous released very soon. Then we have the Ceratosaurus, which definitely looks to have some alterations to the sculpt compared to the previous Ceratosaurus figures, but since the image has been enlarged, it's really hard to tell just how nice the figure looks. The paint scheme looks pretty cool. It's not anything super flashy. I feel like the paint scheme is fairly similar to the Ceratosaurus Clash set that came out not long ago, but definitely pretty fun looking, and I am really excited to have an alternate sculpt as far as the Ceratosaurus goes, especially because it's probably my favorite, well, next to the Carnotaurus now, but probably my favorite species that has ever been included in a Jurassic film. And then we have the Allosaurus, and this one I really, really love. Like, I absolutely adore the sculpt of this figure, and the paint job as well looks pretty darn cool. Definitely a fan of this one. I really wish Mattel would start painting the nails, because again, if there were nail paint on these, they would look so much better. But it's definitely a really cool looking paint scheme, and the sculpt is fantastic. And then we have the one that I was the most excited about, and that would be the Ouranosaurus. And it looks beautiful. I absolutely love this figure. The sculpt looks really nice. The paint looks really cool. The only thing that I can say would be a downside for me at this point in time would be that the tail looks extremely short, which is something that's quite common when it comes to Mattel, but I'm hoping that that's just kind of the angle of the image, and maybe there's a curve in the tail. You can't really tell exactly what the length is because the tail definitely looks a tad short in the image, but otherwise I feel like the figure looks really cool. Beautifully sculpted figure again, and I'm definitely a fan of the paint scheme on this one. So there are a lot of cool reveals here, again thanks to Collect Jurassic, and in general a lot of really cool stuff coming from Mattel. As of right now, guys, that's all the news I've got. When more comes out, I'll be sure to send it your way, but until then, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.